Welcome to another episode of the
Love that.
Overcoming Adversity podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allison. Today's guest is Trevor Tomion. He's the founder and CEO of Common Leaders that work with leaders just like you every single day. Before we get started, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Trevor, my friend, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Michael. I am very excited to be here. Love the intro. Got me in all the right mindset. Thanks for having me.
Man, let's do this, man. So, Trevor, if you can, I like to work with leaders, man. So can you tell me a little bit about working with Common Leaders? What is your company about? What do you guys do? And how do you guys get out here and serve and deliver value to your customers, man?
I appreciate the question. I'll try to keep it short because I am a professional talker. I have been training and I've been interviewing people and leading workshops and designing curriculum for really my entire career since college. So about 12 years now. So my journey in leadership started because I was taught how to do it. I mean, I grew up around leaders, I think, but the formal conventions of leadership is really what got me to our conversation today, where I studied it. And then I got to work in leadership development at an established firm, not quite as established as your firm where you got it, but had been around for a long time. So I kind of got, by guilt of association there, kind of a PhD in leadership and organizational development in my late 20s. And that has empowered me really since that part of my career to do a lot of what I want in leadership development, because once you have that skill set yourself and you can teach it to someone, then you can take it really wherever you want it. And where I've decided to take it with Common Leaders is, in short, to regular people. That's why Common Leaders and not special leaders. I felt like the leaders I had been around prior to starting my own business had talked a lot about leadership being lonely. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus, but there's like alcoholism and bad family manners and a lot of things that go along with like traditionally people that look like me trying to be leaders. So I wanted to give people, I think, a little bit more connection. I felt like the greatest leaders in my life were often not the people at work. Sometimes they were the people at work, but a lot of times it was my mom or my dad or my grandparents or my friends who I looked at for leading me personally through my life. And I wanted to give those people the same kind of highlight that we give managers and bosses and executives. So Common Leaders was born out of this want to elevate the leadership of people like my mom. And I thought if I could elevate the leadership and make her proud of herself and of me, then everything else would be easier. So I talked to leaders all over the country, all over the world. I've talked to people who run music companies. I've talked to people who are in music themselves. Like I really want to work in the rap industry and leadership development and creative development. I have a couple clients that are pending out in that world. And I really work very hard to connect with people who are the most different than me, because everything else is a bunch easier, I found. So I typically walk into a room or I walk into a circumstance where I might be able to meet someone, and I try. I don't try. I think it's just instinctual. I go to the corner that looks the least like me, just by nature of trying to learn and contribute, So my value, I think, to the leadership development world is trying to get everybody to do a podcast like this. Get your voice out there. And that's what drives most of Common Leaders messaging is get your voice out there, make your thing real. So maybe somebody can connect to you. Maybe somebody can be inspired by you. Maybe somebody out there who is a mom who is where you were at 25 years ago can take the knowledge that you gave them. And now you are such a boss in your career after all that struggle, and say to themselves like, oh, I don't need to be Elon Musk. I can be Lavinia. Like that's an achievable goal. And that's actually a pretty badass goal. So it's kind of a long answer, but I really love elevating regular leadership voices to the places where I think that they truly impact their people at a ground level, but get that out a little bit more.
Man, I love that, man. As you're telling me that and sharing your story, bro, I was thinking about when I served in the military and the type of leaders that I came across in various facets. And then once I got into the corporate world, I saw different elements of different types of leadership skills and leadership development programs and things like that, where some things were completely opposite of what I was taught or learned when I served in the military, man. What I wanted to jump into something, though, is I thought it was interesting that you said in regards to elevating different types of leaders or common leaders and things like that. And it sounds like there's a story that connects to your background or to your past. If you can share with us a little bit about your background and the community that you grew up in, and how that contributed or aligned to what you're doing now.
Yeah. I grew up outside of a town of 5,000 in upstate New York. So imagine like where New York City is on a map, and then imagine where Buffalo is, or like
Yeah.
Ohio on a map. And I was right in the middle of that. So I was about 6 hours northwest of New York City. I was an hour away from Rochester. I was 2 hours from Syracuse, 3 hours from Buffalo, like a whole bunch of nothing cities. And I was in the middle of nowhere in between it all.
Mm-hmm.
My county was 15,000, and I grew up on a farm part-time. Like my parents were divorced, so I bounced between my mom's place and my dad's place. And I think that early on perspective of bouncing between being a business person with my dad and being a consumer with my mom really drove a lot of my ability to change perspectives really rapidly. When I'm working with now when I work with a client, I can shift from consumerism to business person to politician to academic, because I've had experience in all those areas. But it really started out with being around great people that raised me. And I'm very, very lucky that, I have good things happen to me, and I usually call my mom first and thank her. So I think my mom has a lot to do with how I look at leadership now, because she didn't get any love as a single mom. Most moms don't when they're in those circumstances because they're too busy to even ask for it. So I think I found kind of a niche in my heart somewhere to connect those dots a little bit, because I think we more as a society, at least speaking for my world, I think we need moms more than ever right now to feel empowered to lead us, because we've done a bad job. so there's a lot of complexities that guide who I talk with and why I talk with who I talk with, but it really starts at a foundational level of, is this going to make my mom proud? And I kind of work out from there. Everything else was college and circumstance and people giving me an opportunity. But in terms of where it all started, it's like, shoot, if your people don't keep you alive for the first decade or so, then you don't even get a chance to do the whole life thing. So I attribute my community to getting me to college, and college to getting me to San Diego, and San Diego getting me to the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry to getting me where I want to go with my leadership message. So it's a quick slide once people get you going in the right direction sometimes.
Gotcha, man. I would like to follow up on that. Being in the family that you grew up in, where it was a bit diverse, and the location where you grew up at was not surrounded by a whole bunch of population and things like that. Did you ever have any certain types of like family expectations that was placed upon yourself, where you had to make some tough choices in regards to like the career path that you was bound to do? Because it sounded like you grew up with mom, you grew up with dad, and you was having various differentiations of experience. So can you tell us a little bit about that, man?
Yeah, that's a quick answer. I was going to be a farmer for 17 years. For 17 years now. 17 years of my life, Michael, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't going to college. I was going to be just like my dad. I was going to be a fourth generation strawberry farmer, and I was stoked about it for 17 years. I dressed, I walked, talked, and act like it. I never got along with the farm kids at school, so it never really grabbed me. But shoot, I wanted to take over the family business my whole life.
So what motivated you to break from that generational pattern, man?
I don't think my dad will listen to this, so I'll say luck. I love my people. I respect my people. My dad is always there for me, and I'm so lucky to have parents that are always there for me into my 30s that are still alive and kicking and supportive. It's like a great gift. They made some changes with the way they operated. And so I went to college, which wasn't really on the radar. I was going to go for plant pathology because that was the path. I was going to go to Cornell or Cobleskill to an ag school. And all of a sudden I was like, no, I don't think I want to do that every day, all day. So I went to the local community college, had a couple of professors that were really inspiring, really inspired. And one of them was a creative writing teacher. And my creative writing teacher when I was 19, John Palzer, is probably, outside of my family, the single most critical person on my journey and where I chose to go, because he showed me process with creativity, two things that I didn't know anything about as a farm kid. So after that, I just sort of opened my mind up and wanted to pursue something bigger. And I've been trying to achieve that, I guess, since then.
So making that type of decision, you know, as someone that's stepping into their own and becoming your own leader, becoming your own man, and all of these different things that's tied to that. Did you ever experience any fear or any anxiety? And if so, how did you overcome any of that?
I got married. Like, there's a couple of quick answers to that one. I got married as soon as I found a person of my dreams, and she has been a best friend to me. I mean, it's really finding best friends that have made my life acceptable since I left home. But certainly picking the right person to do life with for a couple decades has been a really smart choice because of the friend that I get out of it, because of the trust. So I would say, like, reflecting back on how I got through some hard times, I would say safety and trust in friends are really the only thing that matters when you start stripping stuff away. So if you don't trust people, you don't got people you can trust, then it doesn't matter what you're facing. And I would say likewise, no matter what you're facing, if you have a few family and a few friends that you can trust, then the rest will over time hopefully work itself out. I guess I've found my hardest struggle was absolutely school. I was not a good student. Again, I didn't spend any of my life aspiring to be a student. Thank you for that, by the way, scrolling there. And people giving me a chance, man. I was just a bad student. But my mom made me likable, and I tell her that all the time. I'm like, man, I'm so imperfect, but you have made me a caring person who wants to help other people, and that's really carried me through most of my life. Is by caring for other people, they sometimes care back, and that will get you through some rough times. And most of my rough times have been self-inflicted, and tough learnings on how to exist outside of that bubble. You know, you said like leaving was very tough, and it's very tough to stay away because my family wants me to come back all the time. The expectation was that I would stay there. The expectation that I would run for local office or something like that, I'm sure. Like, those were the expectations that were built for me growing up. And so having people outside of my family to help me persevere is 100% the difference between going back and not.
Wow. Man, so you made the jump and you went all the way to California. Can you talk a little bit about what was it like to have like a support system, or let's just say mentors, or people that are challenging you and people that are in your corner rooting for you? Because I think that's extremely important as a human being, as a person, as someone that's out here in this world, to have that type of support system to get them to the next level that they're trying to get to, or your level of success. I know you got married and all those things to kind of keep you grounded, but if you can expound on that a little bit, man.
Good questions, building trust early, rapid transparency. Those are the things that maybe not always I've had, but those are the things that in the last, I guess, few years that have, in my adult life, made me go from understanding how I fit in the world to not caring how I fit in the world because my people have my back. And the only reason I've been able to find those people is by being very upfront with them, being transparent out of the gate, being my intense, crazy self, and them being their intense, crazy selves back. Us being able to look at each other and be like, hey, you got to stop that. Like, or, hey, you need to do more of that. Or, hey, that's a good idea. You need to do that now. Those are the type of conversations I feel like my friends and I have. And that is a selection process like everything else in life. So my time at Bartell & Bartell, which was where I did leadership consulting, was a lot of executive assessment and executive hiring and executive coaching. And that skill set helped me pick friends better because I knew how to ask better questions to people. And if you know how to ask good questions, then you can typically sort of decipher how their brain operates, in my experience. And if you can see how their brain operates, it's like, oh, now I see if we're on the same wavelength or we're not on the same wavelength. So when things are dangerous, I call the person who's most appropriate to save my ass. Pardon my French. It's like, sometimes that's Antonio, sometimes that's my mom.
So I was reading about you, and you got into like skateboarding. You got into podcasting. You're into. You just told me earlier that like you're into hip hop and all these different things and stuff like that. Where did that come from? Being someone that grew up on a farm.
Mm, the subculture. I learned about subcultures out here. And
Okay.
once I learned about subcultures, I got fascinated. I have a background in studying organizational psychology, and I have a master's in creativity, which is also kind of org psych. So org psych is, because you've studied it, org psych is like the relationship between individuals within a community. So whether it's a business or a community organization, a church, a family, it's like all roughly IO psych. And I think discovering the community that comes along with, for instance, a skate group that's dedicated to teaching only non-males how to skate, not just women, but specifically non-males. Anybody who identifies as a non-male, my wife is out helping them learn how to skate. So I get to see what that subculture is like when maybe otherwise I wouldn't get a chance to see that. And it's helped me learn so much more because that's a place that's not meant for me in a lot of ways. And so people trust each other differently within subcultures when I'm not there. So to have ever had an opportunity to peek behind a subculture that maybe wasn't designed for me has been routinely an event that brings tears to my eyes, and also just a lot of gratitude to get a chance to be a part of that. And then I just get hungry to learn more about subcultures, because that's like where the love is at. That's where the people are at. That's where you build trust between one or two people, not a whole group of people. And that's where I found acceptance, is by connecting with individuals. So I think it's usually driven by a little bit of peer pressure and a little bit of openness to the world, a little bit about being grateful about every breath I get, some really stereotypical stuff like that. I mean, shoot, when I think about, like I said, when I think about where I was destined to be, it's not anything but love for it, but it's so much love for the opportunities I've gotten. So I just try to take them when they come up. And if they're super different and make me extremely uncomfortable, then I usually walk towards them.
Wow. Can you tell me a little bit about your leadership style and what does it take to become a good leader, man?
A lot of good mentors and a lot of good opportunities to do it and try it and fail and get better at it. Like you can't be a good leader until you've screwed up some relationships. I think is the tough pill to swallow about that. Like you can be a good leader and never fail, but to transcend the professionalism that comes along with traditional leadership, which I think is stuffy and unnecessary, then there has to be some appreciation for life, some listening skills. But every leader is so different. Like that's really why I love what we do. What you do for your podcast, what I've done in my podcast, is that's what I love about it, is that there are so many excellent humans in the world. So leadership with a person who's never graduated college looks very different than leadership with a person who's got a PhD. Looks very different than a person who's got an MD versus a DPT versus a optometrist. You know, every single type of category of differentiator changes what is going to work well for them, without a doubt. So, you know, mentorship and questions. You know, anybody that wants to be better at leadership is go find a mentor and ask them every question that they're willing to answer.
So for yourself, man, as a leader, how do you continue to grow? How do you continue to evolve and challenge yourself personally and throughout your career, man?
Big shots, always a big shot. Is like among the patients, amongst the studying, amongst the getting ready, is building relationships. So I'm ready for the big shot. Is I network constantly, but I'm very intentional with who I reach out to. And it's almost always somebody I don't feel like I have any business working with, because I want to aim high. I want to punch up. I don't want to stay where I'm at. So my methodology to leadership is always trying to take I've also interviewed hundreds of people. I probably publicly interviewed 300 people in the past 2.5 years. So I feel like part of my responsibility going forward, to speak specifically to the future, is that anything I can do to further my brand is going to also elevate the brand of all 300 of those people along the way, ideally. So when I talk to someone like you, when I talk to someone in general about what I've done with my career, it's in the hope that they'll go watch some interviews with Topaz or Bree or or my buddy Antonio, who I started the whole journey with, or the brothel owner from Reno. Like that's an all-time classic. My first question to her was, so what's leadership to you? you know, we talked about family. We talked about how she'd been married for 15 or 20 years with a couple kids, how she talks about like stuff that a lot of people wouldn't want to talk about publicly, how she communicates that. I want to elevate those messages along the way because that's why I got into it.
Wow. When you think of leadership, and you've interviewed quite a few different people, right? What has stuck out to you when it comes to leadership, when it comes to maybe leadership in the corporate world, leadership when it comes to sports, leadership when it comes to personal life? What are some differentiation that you've seen when you have spoken or interviewed some of these different types of leaders, man?
Artists are more open. Musicians are the most open, the most fun, the most difficult. Like when the more creative the person is, and I am one of those people, the more creative the person is, the harder they are to manage. That's just intellectually, the faster they are to process the world, the harder they're going to be to manage. Like those are just routine facts through my career. Is if you have a person who presents as potentially a problem to the world, that is potentially the most intellectually rigorous person in the room. Like they are bored with whatever you are presenting them. So I try to recognize that. That's like, you took my form, and my form is quite unique. I would say compared to most people's onboarding forms, I want to know who they are as people, but more so I want to know what they aspire to be, because most people don't aspire to be where they've been. So my methodology, regardless of industry, is learning about where they're trying to go, and more specifically, where they feel like they need to be right away. It's like, where are you trying to go? Like, what is your 5-year, I'm losing my breath, I don't get a chance to do this again? Like, what is that thing? Because the world is probably going to help you move towards it. So verbalize it and get it out. Corporate, I don't talk to many corporate people anymore. I stopped talking to corporate people, man. I don't like them. Now, the rules, timelines, ability to be creative, ability to just totally change stuff for the sake of correcting things. Those are things out of the corporate world I couldn't stand. I worked as a downline under the VA and under Booz Allen for a while, and that was one of the most wealthy experiences of my life, but not one of the more pleasurable experiences of my life. So I guess in corporate, you just have to know that they're structured. And so you give them a structure, you give them a process. You don't have to give them the culture all the time. You want to give them a little culture to make them feel appropriate. But when I'm working with somebody who's by the book, I just try to play their game a little bit and keep them loose when I can. But when I'm working with somebody who's loose, I got to keep them a little bit tight. I got to keep them thinking about stuff they haven't thought of because they think they know everything. So that's another piece of the puzzle, regardless of the industry, is challenging with questions I haven't.
So I was going to follow up on that. How does a leader continue to evolve and challenge themselves?
Re-ask the same questions over and over and over again. You will find new ones. The world will present you new challenges. The world will give you questions you never thought of. I promise. Every single day, we are going to find stuff that we hadn't thought of yet. I think post-COVID, the best advice I could say to that end, to develop yourself as a leader continually, or just as a human, is to use COVID as a demarcation. Use that as the place of, did I answer this before COVID? And if I haven't thought about it since before COVID, then I really should ask that question of myself and of the world again, because it wasn't possible for you and I to broadcast our message to millions of people before COVID, but now we can. And so you could ask yourself something, Michael, like, how could I have an impact on the 2024 presidential election? And you could easily say, I couldn't possibly have an impact, but that would be a pre-COVID response. Post-COVID, post-communication changes is like, you can have an impact on literally the election of the you could argue power, but definitely the most dangerous country in the world. And you could have a real impact on that with social media, through YouTube, through podcasts, through connecting and collaborating with other creators and influencers. So I think everything from the most basic question of what kind of food do I like and what kind of person do I want to spend my time with, all the way up to how big of an impact could I possibly leave on this earth, I think is a good question to re-ask post-COVID. And I think each time you re-ask it, you give yourself a chance to kind of reinvent your approach. And that's going to keep you moving forward. For better or for worse, you will screw it up. I mean, right? We agree on that. You will screw everything up along
the way. I want to ask this from another viewpoint. For someone that's looking to follow a leader, right? What are some things that they should look for in regards to identifying a great leader, to saying this is someone that I could follow and this person could lead me and take me to my destination?
I like that one. Every part of me wants to like phone a friend and ask some of the people who I've mentored to be like, what stuck out? Why? How to choose? Shoot. I think it's somewhere between people who will give you a chance, take it if it feels right. Don't overthink it sometimes. If it seems like a person who can keep you safe and better your life, like don't overthink that sometimes. Like especially if you're in a place, and most of us are at some level. If somebody says yes to you or opens a door for you, find a reason to take it, firstly. It's unlikely, even if they're not good people, like I trust you to get out of it if they're bad people, but take the chance when you can. And I would say finding a leader to follow. I mean, they got to have bigger dreams than you, and that's tough to find sometimes. But I think you got to find somebody who's willing to be honest enough as a leader with you to say how absurd their dreams are. And if that aligns with how absurd your dreams are, it's a really good starting place, because you're going to be running towards a similar thing.
I love it, man.
What about you? I want to hear your thoughts. Like, I know we're running out of time, but I would love to hear selfishly. Like, I need to know your thoughts on that, because I feel like you got some.
I think when someone is looking for a leader and they need to find some alignment, they need someone that's going to empower them, someone that's going to inspire them, someone that's going to believe in them, someone that's going to not take advantage of them, someone that's going to challenge them and put them into a creative space to make sure that they're not just handing them things in their hands, but kind of like challenge them to take them to the next level. Right. Because I think if I'm going to follow someone, I'm looking for someone that's going to push me, to let me think outside of the box, allow me to push myself to greater heights and greater levels, because they see something bigger in me and things like that. So that's one of the things that I would look for in a leader, someone that's also going to be giving me constructive feedback in regards to elevating me too as well. I think when some of the times I've came across some leaders, they have done some things and I didn't see the benefit of it too. And then there comes a bit of humility too as well when it comes to identifying a leader, because my next question that I was going to ask you was, how does a great leader bounce back? And I found that if a leader is in a position, right, they're not going to be perfect, right? So how do they lead someone and they're not perfect and they make mistakes? Because one of the biggest challenges that I've seen looking at other people is like, you say this and you do this, but you don't do this, those types of things, right? So when someone is following you, right, what kind of leader are you in regards to admitting fault, admitting mistakes, and bouncing back from that and growing from that when you have other people following you? And I asked that question because I've seen it in the military. I've seen it when I worked in corporate, and it's been very challenging. I've seen different outcomes from both aspects of that.
I think you nailed it. In less words, what I heard you say is transparency and being upfront about those mistakes. Not everybody has that coming out of their upbringing. I don't think I did. I did not have. That's not meant to be a shot. It's just a reflection that my people were secretive. They were passive about stuff, and again, love them, are the reason I'm here. But being passive as a leader when it comes to mistakes in particular is the most destructive thing you can do to your life. There will be secrets that you are forced to keep for the sake of the brand. I've been in enough positions as number two or as an advisor to people to know that you are going to get saddled as a leader. If you're a good leader, you will get saddled with more secrets than you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And deciphering how to handle those secrets is probably the thing that nobody taught me how to do, and the thing that has been either the most helpful or the most destructive. But how I've handled them in the past and they've gone well is I've just gotten up in front of the whole team of 30 people and said, hey, I screwed this up. Like, I hope you'll trust me again. I understand I haven't earned it, and I understand I'm gonna have to get it back. And if it doesn't happen, then I accept that for what it is, but this is what happened. And then in terms of bouncing back, keep receipts, give people a reason to trust you for the things that they don't trust you about. And if it's a you thing, if it's a skill set thing, then don't mistake it for a mistake all the time. Just accept it as maybe not your place and that you should get out of it. And sometimes I think there's a need to correct everything, and there's really not. Sometimes it's just better to leave it be and say, hey, like, this is not the path for me, and I think you can do better.
I love it, man. I love when I see like leaders learning how to delegate and empower people and wanting to see other people shine. I also love when I see in leaders where they may make mistakes, but they're very confident. They're very bold in some of the actions that they take in regards to like knowing that this person kind of did what you just said in regards to like, yeah, I messed up, but their attitude and their personality doesn't change because initially there was something about this person that made you like this person, right? So was it a character? Was it their attitude? Was it their bravado? Those types of things about that actual person. So what you don't want is like a leader messes up and they just get small and they change and they turn into the person that you was looking towards, and now they're no longer that person anymore. And that's what I'm talking about when those types of things too as well.
That's a really good point. I've been there. I've been that person, and I've been on the other end of that person. That's a visceral example. If you felt it doesn't need to be harped on, but like when you said that, I was right back in the moments on both sides of that equation a couple of times. Oof, yeah. That's why common leaders. As I just said, there's got to be more people who understand leadership in a more diverse way that it's going to help me. That's that's got to be what it is, because if you only understand the leadership that you were given by circumstance, like, you were going to miss. I mean, think about if you only got the military training, there would be so much missing from life. If I only got my education in academia, there'd be so much missing from my understanding of leadership.
Right.
If I'd only ever done consulting versus actually going to be a managerial level leader, like, there's so much missing from the context that you don't have. So, to your point, I think understanding how the different ways you can react to a variety of situations so that when that moment comes, it's not the first time you thought about it.
Right. So in your space, man, can you talk a little bit about what is it that you're seeing in the coming future with leadership in terms of technology or AI, right? And then it's a two-part question. And the other part is, I know that there's a big push now around like diversity, equity, inclusion, and things like that. So if you can expand on those two things for me.
I'm glad I poured my coffee for that one. That's a good one. I'm going to take the second one first. We've been dealing with that particular issue for far longer than AI. So, like, let's just be fair about which of those things should be more advanced than the other. It's not funny. It's like there's nothing at certain points. Like, you have to laugh because you're going to laugh at, like, you need to leave. That's all I can think constantly. When it comes to, I guess, I don't really understand a lot about corporate DEI. I'll just be real upfront about that. I haven't worked in corporate America enough. I haven't worked for the government enough. I haven't worked for companies that are forced to adhere to the newest, latest, and greatest all the time. So I don't have really any formal training. I follow I would say, social accounts and from a personal education and the communities I've chosen to engage with since taking on my own business are primarily owned by literally everyone else that does not look like me. So my approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion has been surrounding myself. And by surrounding myself, I mean specifically following. So I've trained all my algorithms to not give me, except for YouTube, because I don't use it enough to train that algo, I guess. But my algorithm is primarily Black culture, I would say, across all of my feeds. And that's how I've trained it to be, because that's where I felt like I wanted to serve if I could try. And I felt like if I could try and be trusted, then connecting and potentially helping anyone else would be probably a lot easier if I could figure out how to build trust within people who are much, at face value different in terms of upbringing than me.
Mm-hmm.
So circumstantially, I have placed myself, I hope, in the middle of as many awkward conversations for a guy like me as possible, so I can learn as much as possible. Most of my LinkedIn top follows are DEI corporate trainers. So most of my knowledge has come really just through my own, I guess, initiatives on those things. So I don't want to speak, I guess, heavily on the formalities, because I don't know many of the formalities. I think I know in my heart and in my head and in my brain and in my intellectual self what the future of leadership looks like, just to transition to that. And I think the future of leadership at face value doesn't look like me. Like, the receipts that I can provide are not very good. And so just from a common sense standpoint, whether it's AI related or not, I think the future of leadership is not white, I think, in short, which I'm excited about. And the world should be excited for, because there's been a lot of destruction. I don't watch the news because I can't handle it most of the time. I am disgusted by the options that we have to run our world. And I think the future of leadership is getting our leaders right, first and foremost. And until we get that position right, it is so hard to imagine that any other leader in the whole world could be right. It's infuriating to me. I'm 35, so for the first year, like, I'm eligible to run for president if I wanted to, which is nuts to think about, but the qualifications are clearly so low. so oh man.
Oh man.
So when I woke up and I turned 35, I thought to myself, boy, 20-year-old Trevor is excited about this day, because 20-year-old Trevor was studying political science. Like, Trevor 15 years ago was stoked about being eligible for president. Trevor in 2024 is stoked to be motivated like that, but Trevor in 2024 is, I would say, blindingly dedicated to facilitating better options for president of the United States. So everything that I could tell you about the future of leadership, I would say, stems from my philosophy about that. Because all the good social domestic decisions that any one person could make or screw up are also counterbalanced by what they're doing to humans in other parts of the world simultaneously at times. So I think until we stop being violent at a federal level, it is hard to imagine that we could stop being violent at a human level in society. And until we can stop being violent towards each other, I think that becoming safety focused is my sort of notion of what the future of leadership is. I think the future of leadership is starting with safety and starting nowhere else, because until we make people feel safe, like Maslow told us however many years ago, that until you feel safe, you cannot function. You cannot fulfill anything you want to fulfill in life if you don't feel taken care of. And no one in this whole world feels taken care of by our country most of the time. Even though that might be a false impression, right, by some things, I think the looming threat that we could get shot, or that they might get us into a situation where somebody wants to shoot us all the time, is terrifying to me. So I don't understand how we could talk about the future of leadership until you say, like, that's a person I want to be. Like, the person who runs the world I live in is a person I aspire to be. I think, to your question about AI can only help us advance that goal. I think digital communication can only help us advance the goal. I think podcast, RSS specifically, and over the top. So there's a video translation called OTT. It's called over the top. And instead of it being YouTube, it's Netflix. And it's a Netflix that you can control. So anytime when I think about the future of leadership related to my philosophy around where it needs to start, I think about how we can make that happen. And you can't make that happen through network TV. Can't make that happen through YouTube. Can't make that happen through Facebook. All of those people are on the books with them. So to be fair, like, they're going to censor that stuff, and they should. That's their job. Podcast, RSS feeds do not censor things. So to anybody who would ever listen to this, who is considering becoming a leader, get your voice out there, make your message heard, go try your message, and please run for president. Like, that is the future, is use all of the tools, all of the people, all of the resources. Find somebody who is smarter and better than you and say, hey, I don't want to run for president, will you? And get them to say yes. And just please push people towards more formal leadership so we can have better non-lawyers doing it. Like, that's a long-winded answer, man, but I am so passionate about getting it right while I can. And there was nothing like waking up and being 35 to be like, shoot, if I'm not going to do it, who is? And how can I be a part of their rise to it? Because it's going to happen. Like, these, like, how? And then my question to you on that, I guess, to transition so I can get out of my head for a second, Michael, is I want to break down the reality of 2024 real hot fast. It's like, we could get to both conventions, and within lots of very easily conceivable reasons, have neither of those two dudes be on the ticket in November because of health and legal reasons for either one of them on any day. So just object, like, I think really truly and honestly, because the conventions have ignored public opinion before, not a ton, but if they were to get to the conventions and have a blank slate, like, there is still an opportunity for us to not have to deal with that. So I hold out hope, and I want to elevate somebody's voice. Who would you put in that position entertainment wise? And would you ever run if the CIA bumped into you and was like, hey, Michael, you got a good thing going. Listen to the podcast. I like what you're doing. I know you're going to want to say no to this because you don't want the pressure. You got too much going on. Life is stressful. Nobody wants to be president. That's insane. But the perks are, you get security for you and your family for the rest of your life, probably the best in the world. We'll pay you all right, but we'll also teach you how to scam the system so you'll never be broke. Like, you're not going to make much money, but you'll never have to worry about money again. So we don't need you to say yes to getting it. We just need you to say yes to running. Would you be willing to run? Go.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think I've given it some thought, as this was a thought several years ago, but I actually probably would run. I would accept the opportunity. So I wouldn't even like pawn it off to anybody else. But if I was to ever be asked to do something like that, I would. Prior to this, even like posing that question to me, I'm a big advocate for veterans. I'm a big advocate for mental health and all those different types of issues. And to have a platform to speak on mental health, have a platform to advocate for veterans and things like that, advocate for kids that are in impoverished or messed up situations and things like that, would be a platform where I would push that type of topic. You also mentioned something earlier which kind of spoke to what you had asked me, and it was around seeing what leadership does, or seeing what leadership say, but they don't actually do what they say. And that's what makes it difficult when you're switched to what you're speaking about. for people to follow someone when you don't practice what you preach. And that's what causes a lot of issue too.
Yeah, why would I not shoot someone when you've taught me that it's okay to shoot people, for instance? Like that, there's just a really basic one is like we have normalized violence everywhere. So
Right.
go figure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Who would be your VP?
Wow.
Pick a famous person. So just respectfully to you, you're the right person for the job of president, but we need some PR. Like we need the bumps and the likes
Oh,
and the entertainment. So
number
who are you
one
going
person I would pick, I would probably pick 50 Cent. 50 Cent would be my VP.
Oh, nice, nice. Yo, oh man. You know, 50, I don't know a ton about 50's entrepreneur, but I've heard he's quite an entrepreneur. I followed some of the more easy names to follow, like what Snoop has done and some of the DC guys. But he's quite an entrepreneur, yeah. Like it's not just he hasn't done music in a hardcore way in quite a while. But how come 50 Cent? Is it like the entrepreneur side of what he does?
I think he does a very good job of maneuvering and networking and connecting people and getting the needle to move. And I think that type of mindset mentality to come out of the situation he came out of in New York, to navigate to work with Eminem and Dr. Dre and those type of people. Also has the mindset of turning adversities into opportunities and things like that. So when one door closes, another one, he finds a way to figure out to make another door open up for himself. He also has, to me personally, I think has the no nonsense type of attitude where like people can't walk over him or try him, those types of things. So I think he's pretty witty in regards to like catching things right there on the spot. Also, I just think he's like a no nonsense kind of person when it comes to dealing with like business and handling things to go to whenever they present themselves and stuff like that. But
Love it.
I'm ready to wrap up, bros. I do have one last question for you, man, before we get ready to get up out of here. Can you tell us a little bit about what are some things that you have going for yourself that you're planning on with your company or with your podcast for this year, man?
It's never been a more fun time to ask that because there is some change happening in my life. Let me tell you, like without getting deep in the last 30 seconds here, there is some change that is going on in Trevor's world. So I am seizing the opportunity to change up how I approach most things in life to help me achieve the goals we just talked about. So I'm planning to do over the next, 4 or 5 months is to continue asking that question that I asked you. However, I'm going to be traveling to do it and doing more in-person events. So I'm hoping to combine like that general principle because it's so fun to play with. And it gets everybody excited to talk about it. Like nobody doesn't want to talk about that question when I bring it up the right way. So I want to go around and I want to get people fired up about it. I want to hear them talk about it. I want to hear people nominate their friends instead of them. Like I want to get to a point where we have 1 million people that say yes to that question. And then we have to actually choose between 1 million people. It's like, God, what a choice. And then I think we can A/B test it because we have YouTube, we have social media, we have likes, we have comments. So theoretically, I believe that in the next couple years, I could help be part of showing direct democracy through social media. And that is my plan for the next step with Common Leaders.
That's what's up, man. Before we get out of here, man, how can people find you? How could they book you on their podcast? How could they reach you, brother?
Easy. Trevor, my first name, Trevor, at commonleaders.com. That is my email. I have ignored all the others. So, LinkedIn is really where I play the most. So, Trevor Tomion. But if you search Common Leaders or Trevor Tomion, there's only one of both of us. We have good SEO like that. So, I'd be excited to meet anybody that wants to meet. And I would also encourage them to listen to the first few episodes of this podcast too, because those are some deep episodes. So if you are listening to this right now and have not listened to how Michael started this, you absolutely should because it will help.
Before we get out of here, man, what are some key takeaways from your life, from your story that you can leave with our audience, brother?
Questions. and hit all you can. So if you're walking into an opportunity as a guy, bring somebody that's not a guy with you. If you're walking into an opportunity as just a gal, bring somebody that's not a gal with you. It changes the dynamics of the room. And of all the super easy things I could ever tell, probably the easiest is in almost every situation, it's going to be beneficial to relate to as many people as you can in a room. So set yourself up to do that.
Wow. I love that, man. That actually gave me some good perspective. Trevor, it's been a pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you for the conversation, my friend.
Thanks, Michael. Can't wait to talk again.
Likewise. Until next time, guys. God bless.
Ain't it all? Couple dollars in my pocket, no income and go. Been working on my body, getting healthier. Thank God for clarity.